In today's video, we're talking about the things I wish I knew when I started in model trains. Why? Because I wish I didn't make it like that. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Tim, and I love all things model trains, but I specialize mostly in weathering and graffiti. Sometimes I wish that there was a training course when you get into model trains, because you're kind of just thrown out into the ring and you just kind of have to start swinging. I didn't know anything about model trains when I started, and I'm sure that most people, when they get into model trains, they don't know anything about model trains too. You have a desire to learn, and so you just get started. I want to talk to you real quick about some things that I wish I knew when I first started. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to be finishing up this car. This is an HO scale hopper car that I actually started working on a couple weeks ago on Go Via or Go Home's Sunday Brunch Kit Builds live series that he does. He goes live every single Sunday at 11 o'clock and he builds kits. And he goes live, he invites people onto his live if they want to do model train related things. It was a lot of fun. Now, the thing about it is, I would normally be done this car in the amount of time we were on the live. However, we were having a lot of fun just talking, enjoying the day, enjoying the company, talking to the people in the chat, all these different things. So I really only got one side of the car done and I didn't get it weathered. But that's okay. My plan was always to jump back onto his live and finish this car. However, Sundays are very busy for me, so it hasn't happened and I want to get this car done, so here we are. I've gone ahead and I've put a pencil sketch on this side already, and I'm just going to start working on it, and I'm going to be talking to you about the different things that I wish I knew when I first got into model trains. So the first thing I wish I knew is that vintage does not necessarily mean it's worth anything. Most of the time. Everybody, when they first get into the hobby, wants to get as much model trains as they can possibly get, as fast as they possibly can. So if you're like me, you get up and you go to the model train shows and you find the cheapest cars that you can possibly find, and you get as many as you possibly can, and then you go home, you take them out of the box, if they even have a box, because a lot of times they're used and they're just sitting in a box on a table and you just take what you need. And then you put them on your layout that you have no experience building, and nothing runs properly because you didn't lay your track right, and the cars and engines that you buy are garbage. That's what I did. Some of the stuff I bought right away was pretty decent. Some of the stuff that I bought was absolute junk. And a lot of times, I've seen it countless times, people selling stuff online, and they say vintage model trains, and they price it like it's made out of gold or something like that. And it's all just a bunch of junk. It's just junk. And the reason for that is not because it's always been junk. It's just that times change and technology changes, and therefore the quality of anything to do with the hobby just gets better and better as the years go by. So when you go back 30, 40 years into the hobby, it just doesn't hold up to what there is today. If I could say one thing about it, is that just don't waste your time. You don't have to buy state-of-the-art, absolutely fantastic stuff right from the start, because first of all, you don't even know if you're going to stay with the hobby. And what I would suggest is that you find the good stuff, but find it used, find it on clearance, find it in the consignment section, but don't look for those bargain bins where it says $5 a car and you get 3 or 4 cars duct taped together and say, there you go, here's a package deal. And then the more cars you buy, the cheaper they are. And just don't waste your time with that. You're never going to be happy. And you're going to end up with a bunch of stuff with the wrong couplers and plastic wheels and nothing runs right, and you're just not going to be happy with it. Now, that being said, if that's your cup of tea or coffee, then go for it. If you just want to make a train go around to satisfy a grandson or something like that, by all means, knock yourself out. But if you want to get into the hobby because you want to make something look realistic and you want to make something prototypical, etc., don't bother with vintage. Vintage. I love that word. It's such a buzzword. When I see vintage, I run the other direction. Now, the second thing kind of goes hand in hand with the first one because I mentioned it briefly, and that is that metal wheels or steel wheels are better than plastic. I did a video about that real quick. It was actually a short. I'll link it right here if you haven't seen it. It just briefly talked about how I could only pull 11 cars up a 1% grade with 2 locomotives with plastic wheels on all my cars. I had actually found a stash of metal wheels in a box that I completely forgot I even had. I was able to switch over 23 cars, and I was able to pull all 23 cars just barely up my 1% grade. And now, before you get in the comments and you talk about how horrible that is, because I mean 23 cars is really not that spectacular up a 1% grade with 2 6-axle locomotives, but you have to understand that the 2 6-axle locomotives in question have been sitting on a shelf for 2 years. They're dirty, they need a good cleaning, and also my 1% grade goes up a hill and around the corner at the same time, to the point where by the time the last car is approaching the bottom of the grade, the locomotives are halfway around the layout and going in the opposite direction. So there's a lot of friction there because the train is pulling essentially in 3 directions and going up a 1% grade at the same time. It's not a gradual, constant curve. It's a straight, then a curve, then a straight again. So yeah, 23 is not a number to write home about, but at the same time, I doubled the length of train that I was able to pull just by switching the wheels. So if you can, I would highly suggest that you buy cars that already have steel wheels on them. Now, if you're curious what I'm doing graffiti-wise here, I've done a pencil sketch, and I'm actually just dabbing paint on. This is just regular acrylic craft paint with a Q-tip. Now, the car is already pretty light. I could have just gotten away with painting right on it, but sometimes it's nice to be able to cover up those road markings before you go on to the next step. So the next point is for people that run DCC. Now, if you're new and you don't know what I'm talking about, there are 2 basic ways that you can be running your trains. There is DC, which stands for direct current. It essentially is just the old school way. You put a train on a track, you put power to that track, and the more power you put to the track, the faster the train goes. Now, that being said, every single train that you put on that track will go when you put power to the track. Now, there's really sophisticated wiring that you can do that, truthfully, I know absolutely nothing about, where you can do different block sections and you can run multiple trains at a time. But oh my goodness, is it a song and a dance. I know zero about DC blocking and DC wiring on a train layout. So I knew from the jump that I wanted to get into DCC, which stands for Digital Command Control. And basically what that means is that every train has a decoder chip in it, and the rails get a constant voltage, and they send information through the rails to the decoder. But every locomotive is programmed with their road number, and you can tell that engine to move. And then you can tell that engine to move, and they will both move in the direction that you tell them at the speed that you tell them, and they can move in different directions at different speeds, and essentially it's like life. So I knew from the start that that's what I wanted to get into, and that's a whole other topic for another day, but that's basically just DCC versus DC in a nutshell. Now, when you're buying locomotives and you are DCC, buy one that already has a decoder in it. You can buy them that are DCC ready, or you can buy them without DCC, and you can install the decoders afterwards. But you don't save any money. In fact, in a lot of cases, you end up spending money because, first of all, it is more money, and second of all, if you don't know how to install a decoder properly, you have to pay somebody to do it for you. So it's just so much easier, and it's way less hassle to just buy your locomotives with decoders in them. So we're waiting for paint to dry, so I'm just gonna fire off a couple real quick. Just because they give you a minimum radius doesn't mean you have to use it. Now, I understand that there are times when you have to use a minimum radius because you're trying to fit trains into a tight space. You don't have a lot of room, so you think, okay, what's the minimum radius of a curve that I can run my train? But you're just setting yourself up for failure. And if you ever want to run anything longer than a 40-foot boxcar or a 4-axled locomotive, too bad. You just can't. The minimum radius is a guideline. However, if you can run wider, the wider the better, because you're going to run into way less issues. You're going to be able to run way longer trains and way longer train cars. So I'm actually coming in with pencil crayon, if you can believe it. I am going super light with the pencil crayon. Now you got to make sure that you don't scrape off the paint. So I'm going in really light-handed circles with the pencil crayons. I'm not trying to put too much on. I'm just going really, really light. Now the thing is, you can actually use the same technique the next time your kid or your grandkid asks you to color in a coloring book with them, and you're just gonna blow them away with your mad art skills. So what I'm doing is I'm just doing one color straight across the bottom, and I'm gonna do 3 colors. I'm just picking an imaginary line across this whole thing. I don't want to actually draw a line because that defeats the purpose of the circles. The whole idea is to not see pencil marks in what you're coloring. You just want to put a nice even coat of color across the whole piece. So one thing that I'm going to do now that I've done this whole color is I'm actually going to go with the orange and I'm going to color into the red area and just blend the 2 colors a little bit. It's really subtle, but it just helps make it seem like the paint, because you're mimicking paint at this point. It just makes it seem like the paint is blending. It's kind of hard to pick up on camera, but you can kind of see it. And then next, we're going to take the pink, and we're going to finish this last little bit, and do the exact same thing. We'll blend the pink into the orange, and the orange into the pink, and we'll be set. So the next thing I want to talk to you guys about is making sure your bench work is strong and flat. There's nothing worse than nudging your layout and the whole thing shakes and you knock 3 trains over. And there's nothing worse than having your layout slightly off level and your cars with freshly changed steel wheels just whip on down the layout on their own. With no power, just cruising. It's not cool. You want to make sure your layout is strong so that if you bump it, nothing moves. And you want to make sure it's flat so that nothing rolls away. Now again, this is my opinion. If you want to model a train layout that's at a 45-degree angle and it does the hokey pokey when you breathe the wrong way, that's your call. A bonus tip with that one is that if you build something strong, there is still a chance that you can bump it and it will move. But what you can do, if your layout happens to run along a wall, just pick a couple spots and screw it to the wall. It doesn't have to be crazy. It doesn't have to be every 2 inches you're screwing it to the wall. It doesn't have to be every stud. But just pick a few spots. Just put a screw in the wall. Find a stud, stick it in the wall. If it's concrete, get yourself a Tapcon, drill it, and screw it into the wall. That way, even if it's not super strong, it's attached to the wall now, and it's not gonna shake from side to side if you bump into it. So now I've got the pink done, and I'm just gonna go back through, like I said, and just do a little bit of pink into the orange, and then I'm also gonna do a little bit of orange back up into the pink. Again, it's really, really subtle. You probably can't even see it on camera. If you can, let me know. I'm curious. If you can see that there's a difference when I blend the pink into the orange, and it's noticeable, let me know in the comments. I'm actually curious if you can tell the difference, because otherwise, maybe I'm just wasting my time, but I can see it. Here's a fun one for you. Every pencil crayon box and every crayon box comes with a white. Why? Because they make it like that. No. There is a reason why, and it's not to color a snowman in a snowstorm. Like you used to do when you were a kid. You just drew a carrot on a page and you're like, yeah, it's a snowman in a snowstorm, there you go. The idea behind the white pencil crayon is to blend colors together. So I'm just gonna really quickly go over this thing with nice light circles with the white. And it just kind of makes everything one big solid mass. And now comes the line work. This is where it really starts to come alive. I'm going to try the Sharpie pens again. Okay, we're in business. So today, we are using Sharpie pens for our line work. I can get a much finer line with the Sharpie pens than I can with my paint marker, and if I can find a paint marker that's just as fine as a Sharpie pen, I'll be happy, because the problem with Sharpie pens, I've probably told you this before, but the problem with the Sharpie pens is that they die when you draw on plastic, especially over top of paint, but they dry really quick. You have to have a lot of them handy. When I'm getting ready to go to a show, I tend to gear up and grab at least a dozen of these things because I know I'm going to use them. And there have been times when I've had to go on the Saturday night to a dollar store and pick up a bunch more because they really do die fast when you're drawing on a car. See that? Dead. That's as far as I got with one. And sometimes you can wake it up, you scribble on another piece of paper. Sometimes if you leave it in your coffee can, your nice Tim Hortons coffee can, you leave it cap down, then the ink will drain down to the tip. But sometimes you just pitch them and you move on to the next. Sometimes they're tired and you just have to move on. Don't get emotionally attached is all I'm saying. Yeah, this one, I tried to wake it up, but it's dead. It also depends on where you're drawing, because sometimes you're gonna hit a spot where the paint's a little bit thicker and then it labors a little bit more. Like if you're just drawing on the plastic over here, then you have no issues a lot of times. But when you're drawing on existing paint, like the acrylic paint, that's when you start to run into trouble. And dead. Here's another one. Oh, this one's dead already. If all else fails, I'm gonna have to get the paint marker out, but I'm really hoping that I can make these work. I think honestly one of my favorite parts is the 3D part. It just makes everything so great. I'm gonna do some white on the letter where the shadow goes over top of the letter. So where the S goes over top of the K, I'm gonna do a little bit of a white line along the K. And then I'm gonna do the same thing on the A where the K is. I'm gonna do it here on the T. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go against everything that I said I would do. And I'm going to take this orange and I'm gonna draw a nice diamond in there. Just a few little somethings, just like that. And then the joke is, because I'm actually on a hopper that's a really light color, I don't need to use a paint marker to get my background color. I'm actually just gonna use a pencil crayon. And I'm just gonna color in a nice little background here. The thing with backgrounds on graffiti, a lot of times it kind of looks like, I mean, I don't know the theory behind it to be completely honest, but from what I can tell, a lot of times the background on graffiti is kind of bursting out. Like the whole idea is to make it look like it's exploding off of the car. I've actually gone away from the circle method and I'm trying to make everything look a lot more jagged. Like it's popping off of the car kind of a thing. Okay, so I've gone over the whole thing one more time with the teal color, and dude, I'm super happy with it. I know I say that about everything I do, but honestly, I'm happy with this one. I really am. It just goes to show you sometimes you don't have to use paint. This is pencil crayon. I mean, yeah, I use paint marker and I use paint as a base coat, but this is pencil crayon. So sometimes you just gotta experiment, and that leads me to my last point. Just get started. It sounds cliche, but in all honesty, there were so many things that I didn't start because I was afraid that it would turn out bad. I was too afraid with a lot of things to start because I felt like I didn't know what I was doing and I wanted to wait until I did. But some things you just have to jump in and learn how to do. For example, graffiti. I just dove in. And I mean, yeah, I could have practiced on paper, and I did practice on paper, doing some sketches and coming up with a style and mimicking stuff that I've seen in pictures and I've seen go by on the tracks and things like that. There's no real way to learn other than to just start doing it. Because the thing is, the material of a train car is so different than a piece of paper. You can practice in your sketchbook all day long, but until you actually start on a car and practice on cars and mess a few up, that's why you start with your own. You mess a few up, you buy the junk, you buy those cars I told you not to buy, and you practice on them. You practice on the vintage ones. And then you work your way up, and you get to a point where you can take a car, you can take a brand new exact rail car out of the box and just have at it without even thinking about it. So just start. I hope these tips were helpful to you. I hope that you learned something even watching this graffiti. And if you did, feel free to subscribe to this channel and click that bell so that you're notified every single time I post a new video. I'm gonna weather this car in an upcoming video because I feel like this is enough of a topic for today. I'm gonna weather this car real soon for you guys. I promise you that. It might even be a live. That's another thing I want to talk to you about real quick. I went live this past week and I had a blast. It was totally random, unscheduled, and I really appreciate you guys that came on and you were talking to me in the chats and we were having a great time running trains. It was great. I might do it again completely random, unannounced, and I do want to actually schedule some lives. My plan, my goal, nay, my aspiration is to go live twice a month, scheduled. And then whenever I feel like going live any other time, I will. Why not? So, I promise you guys, I am going to finish this car live. Now, whether I schedule it or whether it's random, I don't know. So what you're gonna wanna do, so that you don't miss it, is you're gonna wanna subscribe to this channel and click that bell. Click the little bell, and make sure that you press all. That way, anything I upload, you will get a notification of. So if you're on your phone, all of a sudden you're gonna get a notification. Guess what? They make it like that's going live and they're gonna weather this and you're gonna miss it. Don't miss it. Don't miss it. So you gotta make sure that you're subscribed and that you've clicked that bell. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and all the nice things that YouTubers ask you to do. And until next time, they make it like that.